Bro, what's going on, man?
What's good? What's good? What's good? How you been? Looking through your fancy glasses.
Don't do me like that, man. I'm just, bro.
You
I'm just
just
trying to
living, I
do what's
know.
right. I'm just trying to do what's right by the people. Hey, listen. Important topic that we're talking about today, man. So, New York State just sent out some guidance on safeguarding the rights of immigrant students, right? And so, for those of you that are listening, on Thursday, I put out an internal document to my staff because I didn't know that this was coming down the pipeline on Friday. And so on Thursday, pretty much took from the framework of what was happening in New York City, from the guidance to the DOE. Um, so when this came down the pipeline on Friday, I was super surprised, but excited though, right? Like surprised in a good way because I did not think that the state would take this stance. So I am elated that they did. So I have a slide deck for us to go through to kind of highlight uh to give some of the highlights. So safeguarding the rights of immigrant students, guidance for New York State districts. And so, a jointly issued by the Office of the New York State Attorney General and the Office of Governor Hochul highlights relevant resources and obligations under the state and federal law to ensure equal access to education for all students, regardless of immigration status. But let's stop. Let's take a pause, right? So, jointly issued by the AG and as well as issued by Governor Hochul. What's your initial take on that?
I mean, I think it's smart, right? Because whatever guidance the governor's office puts out, the AG is going to have to be the one to fend off any legal battles that come as respect to this. And so I think it's a smart move to be able to do it alongside the AG, since my review of the document, most of this stuff can get pretty legal and pretty technical pretty quickly. And a good, there's a good chance that pieces of this will be attacked in the courts. So having the AG sort of co-sponsor this guidance, I think, was a smart move. I do wonder, however, if they were putting the final touches on this as Mayor Eric Adams was down in Mar-a-Lago pleading for his
His political career, his political life. Um, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to digress. I'm just saying.
No, no. I think that's a good segue. All right. So first question up is how can schools create a welcoming and inclusive environment for immigrant students, especially in the light of recent threats of increased federal immigration actions? And so I want to be clear, man. Like there are a lot of things that these politicians say that you have to take them for their word. There's some things that they say because they're just being boisterous and they really aren't aren't going to follow through. But I take Trump for his word with regards to what he says uh, about immigration. And the reason why I say that is because he's had some real draconian policies with regards to how to approach immigration, right? So like we saw the Muslim ban, we saw, like just like this visual towards people of color in terms of the southern
Family
border.
separation.
Right, right. And so those are all things that we saw. And so you kind of have to take him at his word when he's telling you that, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be mass deportation starting on day one. And I'm hearing from the border czar, I don't know who that person's name is. It's not striking me at the moment, but they're supposed to start with this mass deportation in Chicago.
Yeah, and I think what they'll do is, I think they will start with folks who already been had the legal cases deported from a legal perspective, and they just haven't had the chance. Like we haven't gotten to the point yet where we have physically removed them, and so there's a good number of folks who've already gone through courts, have been legally deported, and are just in the sort of the waiting zone between where we are right now and them actually being physically deported from the country. And so my sense is that that will be the place where he starts. And there's a good number of those folks, and so it is quote unquote easy for them to start because there's been a lot of work already done for those folks who have been gone through the legal due process and are being deported from the U.S. anyway.
Yeah. I'm putting myself in the mind of a young person that is going to be in a system that already doesn't love them, but that is now going to have this bias and collective action against them, right? And so now you're going to have young folks that are people of color that are going to be in these. I'm gonna put it out there. They're going to be in these suburban districts that don't give two shits about them. That the biases are going to now seep out. Um, what are your thoughts in regards to that? You grew up out here, man. You know how it is.
I know too well how it is out there, but I wouldn't say it's just suburban, right? I'm here in Queens, and those parent channels have started to blow up. So what I would say to you is I think that there's sentiment around immigration status, and I think it is. And the an anti-immigrant and sort of pro deportation is popping up in large numbers in a variety of places. So I wouldn't just put it on the suburbs. That being said, yes, I do think that the folks, I do think the suburbs are probably leading the way on that. And I think of this in terms for students' perspective. I think in terms of so two groups of students, right? They're the students who they themselves have questions around their legal status, right? And they are worried about whether or not they'll be deported and what their safety looks like. And then there are the students who may be U.S. citizens, but whose family come from mixed status families, right? And so the fear for what's going to happen to a family member, a brother, a sister, a parent, an uncle, an aunt, those things can become really nerve wracking. And so I think what this can be for a lot of students, if first and foremost, is just a significant um, distraction from their schoolwork, right? And a smart one. Like, I'm not saying it shouldn't be a distraction, but this will be another reason why they're unable to focus on their studies, because there's going to be a lot of worry about for their own safety and for their family's safety.
Yeah, but so thinking about this, well, we're talking about it right now from a K-12 space, but we could also talk about it from a higher ed space too.
Yeah.
It's like what are some of the things that these dreamers or these folks that are like first generation students on campus that now have to worry about going into midterm, going into final exam, going into like all these things with like these additional stressors that are now on your plate because now you got to think about, well, what if my mom gets deported? Like, what am I going to do? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and look, what I would say to you is, I think this is always a constant fear for those families, right? And so this is something that's always on their mind. It is now just heightened their
Yeah,
concern given sort of the activity, and depending on their specific case, that fear might be larger than others. For many of those students who are sitting on campus right now and trying to figure out I mean, they're worried about if their actions will cause something negative to happen to their families, right? Their application for financial aid, their desire to, interact in, other sort of federal programs that they may need for housing insecurity, for food insecurity, for all of those things could be the thing that puts their family at risk. And so, there's both the fear and also the desire not to be the reason why that bad thing happens to your family, right? And
bro.
so I can't imagine it's yeah.
Bro, I could not imagine being a student and having this feeling of if I fill out this financial aid form, which is gonna like propel me in terms of like the trajectory of my life, but then now I have to worry about if by filling out this information, I'm now giving these folks too much information, so now they can go and persecute my loved ones. Man, that's a crazy predicament to be in. No young person should have to be in that position, and this is wild. Um, I think the second part of the guidance was with regards to enrollment and registration requirements. So it says school districts must erect discriminatory barriers to enrollment or discourse immigration students from yeah. So like you can't discourage immigration students from registering, but there are a lot of ways in which districts have done that and will continue to do that. So one of the ways that I know that these districts do that is that they require like it's proof of residency, right? Like so, like certain districts, or whatever, it's like they require you to have certain documentation that says that hey, you're registered in this district, and I think that's one of the ways that that occurs because it's like if you're living with a relative or you're living like unlawfully with someone else, you're not going to be able to come up with like a light bill or come up with a bill because you're living with somebody else. And so I don't think that we take that into consideration when thinking about registering students. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess part of this is not running a school, and you would have to tell me more on this. Part of the question I have is like if you are registering students and you need to collect information for basic correspondence, right? Um, I don't know how you like. I don't know where that line gets blurred. Obviously, the like, I want a light bill, I want a phone bill. Some of this stuff gets extra, but at a
Yeah,
very at the most basic level is like, give me a home address. Right at this
yeah,
point, that type of stuff is also could be something that dissuades a family from registering, right?
yes,
Because they're
yes,
worried about that
yes.
information being collected. And so, like, I don't know how we find that line from a data collection standpoint, because I'm assuming as a school leader, you just need some of this information just to be able to process student and to work with that student generally.
Yeah. Yes and no, right? Like we as a charter school and like for those people that are running charter schools is a little bit different than a traditional
Yeah, yeah.
public. And so for a charter school, in order for us to be able to build a district, we have to have the address of the sending district in which that student lives. And so it's a little bit different for us. Like we have to have that information. However, I don't think that it's the same way for a district. I think that there's a way to build the state
Mhm.
for pupil funding without you having that address. And like I feel like they become stigglers
Mhm.
of these addresses based off of who those students are. And
Yeah.
so, it's it's hairy, and I don't want to I don't want to cast my aspersions on these districts, but I feel like they are allowed autonomy to be able to discriminate against historically marginalized subgroups is where I'll say.
No, I get it, and I think that's the like I think that's the problem here, right? Is that there's potentially a reason for the practices that they have, right?
Yes.
A on the face legitimate reason, which someone who is not, who is not heavily either pro or against the sort of the immigration sort of
Yeah.
debate will look at and be like, well, that makes sense, right? You need that information. And I think this is where the rub happens, right? Is that that for the average person who doesn't really understand the way this stuff works, to be able to say, well, yeah, I want to prove that a student lives in the community before I put them in the school. It's like, well, yeah, shouldn't you like
Yeah.
we shouldn't be educating students from right? And so like that's the issue here is that there is you can
But you
hide
should be
behind some
educating
of
all
these
you should be educating all students anyway, right? Like if a kid my
that's
thing is like if a
yeah.
kid is a if a kid can prove to you that they're a certain age, it really doesn't matter where they live. Like you can build a state and you can get that funding. And so all this other talk and whatnot, bro,
Yeah,
I had an assistant superintendent, now a superintendent at the district out here. I won't call her name out. But she hired a private investigator in her district in order to ensure that the folks that were saying that they were in the district that were coming to the charter school were in the
yeah.
district. And bro, I'm just not willing to do. I'm not willing to go that hard. Like I don't care that much. I just want if you. But see, but that comes from that whole this whole like vision of I love every kid. So like regardless of if
Yeah.
that kid is in my school or regardless of if that kid is in a traditional public school, I want that kid to get the best education that they can. And so I just don't think that that's mirrored with some of these
Well,
institutions.
I think you put your finger on it though, right? Because you just said I love every kid.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know that that's the case. This isn't this right. This is not coming from a place of love for every kid. This is coming from a different place. I'm not saying that those people don't love kids. What I'm saying is they don't love every kid, right? And the work
Yes.
that you and I do, it's about every student, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of where that student comes from, what that student believes, what about how that student identifies. Every student deserves a quality education, and that is different than other. And that I think that fundamental that's the fundamental disconnect, right? It's like they don't love every student, and so they're only going to worry about the students that they do love, and that's where I think we get into these weird practices around registering schools for students and enrolling students in your school. It's like it doesn't come from a place for love for educating all students. It just doesn't.
I don't think it ever will, bro. Next question we got is what challenges might schools face in implementing these guidelines, and how can they overcome them? Bro, so what I did was I tasked my principals. I'm like, listen, all this comes through you, right? So like
Yeah.
if a ICE agent comes to the school or whatever, I don't care what that teacher's fundamental beliefs are. I don't care if that teacher, I don't care what side of the political aisle that teacher falls on. I don't care what their beliefs are on immigration status. I don't care about any of that. They don't have to interact with the ICE agent. What they need to say is, "I'm going to get my principal." That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. I'm going to kick this up a level. This is I like how folks like to say, this is above my pay
Yeah.
grade. Hey, this is the
They like to say
perfect
it all other
opportunity.
things. They just say,
Yo, this is the perfect opportunity for you to use that in discourse. This is above my pay grade. I love that for you. Right now, I love that for you to be able to say that. Yes. And so,
yeah.
the principals have been instructed on exactly how to deal with it. They're being trained in terms of the protocols that they need to use, and that's what I'm doing, man. It's like,
Yeah.
I love the fact that they released this, because again, I had this internal document that we were circulating amongst us, but now I have no problems with like it being public or it being a public face, because there's no fear of retribution now.
State
Based
guidance.
off,
It's state guidance.
yeah,
Yeah, it's state
yes,
guidance. You could say, well, it's above my pay grade.
yes, yes. Uh, Kathy Hochul, thank you.
But I
Thank you
think
very
that's why they
much.
put I think that's why they put this out, right? Because without this type of guidance, they're leaving building leaders and district leaders to make their own decisions and make decisions that impact students without feeling secure. And so, before this, I'm sure there are plenty of leaders in institutions that would worry about becoming a target legally, public relations perspective of communities if they are not complying, if an ICE agent sort of knocks on their door or if the police knock on their door, right? And so this gives them the backing that school leaders need. Otherwise, what we would have is however number of buildings there are in a district, that's how many different reactions to someone knocking on that door you're going to get, right? Because everyone's going to be thinking about like, all right, what's my risk tolerance here? Do I want to be a target? Do I want to get sued? Do I want to have to deal with this stuff? And so this gives folks the cover they need to behave in accordance with loving and respecting all students in their buildings.
But this is why I'm different, bro. This is why I'm built different. I sent
Yeah.
out my internal document prior to, because I didn't care what the state had to say. I'm glad that they essentially said the same thing, but my
Yeah.
code would not allow for me to not have these students be protected, and not everybody that's in positions like us have or live by the code that we live by in terms of loving and protecting all of our students and families, bro.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's right. And look, but what's interesting is that you probably can tell the school districts that live by that code, not just by this, but by how their students perform on state tests, about the resources that their students have, about the like this goes along with everything else. To me, these are really connected. Like I
Yeah.
know a lot about your school. I know a lot about G schools and the way students perform and the sort of the love you put into teaching students. My sense is that the school districts that have other questionable practices would probably have questionable practices here too.
So all right, so let's talk about it, right. Let's talk about it. Since I don't receive any kids from these particular districts right now as we speak. And
Yeah.
so, as a matter of fact, no, actually I do receive kids from one of these districts. All right. So let's talk about it, right? So like, if we think about Suffolk County, right? I feel like
Mhm.
there's one district that you are familiar with that would have handled this the way me or G would have handled it. Like in
Yep.
Brentwood, you could only handle it this way in Brentwood,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right. I think that's
Now,
right. But in other districts, that's probably not
no,
the
I'm about to put you on the spot. So right down the road, in Central Iceland, I don't think we get the same response.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree, and I think even in Brentwood there would have been you probably got a similar response, but there probably would have been a lot of community sort of frustration about it, right? Because I think this
Mhm.
is, that community in particular, the community where there's a significant migrant community, a significant immigrant community, and so that's a community that since I was there and I went to high school 30 something years ago, right? Like we were struggling, like the school was struggling with how to help the community manage the fact that the school was increasingly becoming, having immigrant students in it and what to do about that. And so I think that school district that's had decades of practice dealing with
Yes,
this. And then there are school districts that don't have that, right? That the migrant communities entering their schools is a newer practice and they don't have the language, they don't have the history, they don't understand sort of the whole process, and they're going to behave differently. And look, and what's interesting to me is that I think for a long time, Brentwood and CI, when I was growing up, the school districts were, I don't want to say similar. I think the populations were really similar in terms of it was,
yes,
very diverse populations of students, right? And it's just interesting to me how differently those administrations react to uh, educating all young people, is what I'll say.
yo, bro, and and these young people know who love them, and they know who don't, and
and
so
I
then
I got family who teach in both districts, so I'm not trying to throw shade to nobody.
I'm not saying that you are, but I'll take you one. I'll take you one step further. Right, we'll do a mixed method reality of the situation, and we'll look at the data, right? Because like there's data that supports that the kids
Yeah,
perform better in environments where they feel cared for, they thrive, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah.
if I look at Brentwood's data and I compare it to Central Iceland's data, or if I look at anybody's data in New York State and I compare it to Central Iceland's data, it's a no brainer in terms of how that's happening. But if I was if I was if I was going into a district and I had no care in the world and I was tenured, I want to be in CI because you ain't gonna do shit.
I'm a, where's my disclaimer? I need to hold my disclaimer up so I can make. I don't want to get. I don't want to
Are
get
you?
uninvited. I don't want to get uninvited to Thanksgiving. Hold on.
Or you just do what you can. You do what you can. Right? You do what you can, and leave the rest to God. All right. So, protecting student information and records, right? So, like we're thinking about FERPA. Schools are
Yeah,
not required to provide student information to federal or local law enforcement officials, right? Like we all know that, like that's common sense. But a lot of times when folks are put under pressure, they crumble under pressure, and then all of a sudden they just do whatever it is they what the emotion allows for them to do. And so, if you're listening to this, you're an educator, please know that you do not have to give information to federal agents or local agents of kids because of FERPA. FERPA protects you from having to do that. What's your advice
you
to
shouldn't be. You shouldn't be giving personal information data to anybody.
that?
I,
Oh yeah, of course.
I don't care. I don't care who knocks on that door, right? I mean, I think this is the thing that I think is in place for really smart reasons, and I think this idea of like saying like you can't have access to this personally identifying information, right? Like the school has access to it for teaching and learning purposes. Other than that, there's really no reason to have access to the data. And if you don't have the right of the parent, right, to be able to access that data, you shouldn't have access to that data. The work that we do, at my day job, very much sort of assists in this role. We need to get permission from many of our students are adults because they're college students, right? So without their permission, we don't have access to data. We don't without their parents' permission, we don't have access to their data. And so like this just to me is like pure common sense. Again, this is the place where without the federal guidance, I do think that there would be school leaders who say, it's the police. I should give them data, right? And like, or it's the federal government. I should give them data. I'm like, you shouldn't be giving data to anybody.
and this serves as this serves as a healthy reminder that data you should not be giving to anybody. Like, what are you thinking? And so,
It's
if you're
not
even
their
thinking
data to
about it,
give, right? It's
yeah,
not your data to give, right?
at all,
I know we treat it as our data because we have to secure it and protect it and do all the things that we do. But at the end of the day, it is our students' data. It's not our data. They are
yeah.
granting us access to their data.
So I'm thinking about school resource officers right now. And so school resource officers, and then those officers that, I mean, those schools that have the metal detectors and like all. First of all, I don't think that a school that has a metal detector, and I'm sure this turns into a different episode, but a school with a metal detector is not a school. That's Rikers.
Yeah, I don't. I taught at a school that didn't even let teachers bring in glass. We had metal detectors, and they didn't let teachers bring in glass bottles. Like it was like it felt. I felt every day like I was heading into prison. That's what it felt like when I was there.
That just doesn't give me a good. But this but I understand the counter argument of
Yeah,
when a school is out of control and when there's like when there's dangers or whatever. But it's like, what do you like? You need to invest in making sure that your school culture is one that is one that doesn't have that. So like, what are the things that you're doing in order to get you to the point to where you don't have to do that, where you can,
yeah,
because I
yeah.
always said if I ever had to work in a school or a school district that had metal detectors, that'd be it for me. I wouldn't. Time to
I
go to
didn't stay.
higher ed.
I didn't stay there long.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would be able to function right. I wouldn't be able to focus. I wouldn't be able to focus on the well-being of the students. I'll be focusing on other things.
I mean, I think the issue for me is I understand the reason why folks need it. I think school safety is really important, so I'm not. But I think, I think you start to get into this like you create the existence of that type of culture, the existence of the metal detectors. I think then starts to feed into the narrative, and that becomes the cult. Like if you treat students like prisoners, they're gonna act like prisoners, right? And so
Oh,
like right and so I think that's the issue is that it reinforces itself, right? The more you treat students that way, the more they're going to act that way. And what's going to happen is the more of the students you can move out of that school will move out of that school, and you will deal with an increasing number of situations. And so like I feel like to borrow a phrase from a president a long time ago, I feel like it's a race to the bottom when you start to implement those type of draconian rules.
not a race to the bottom. Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I feel like, yeah, we got one more. All right. So law enforcement and school property. So law enforcement officers may not remove a student from school property or interrogate a student without the consent of the student's parents or a person in parental relation, except in limited circumstances. And so, folks, if these folks come into your school, they come on your property, they're talking to kids, immediately whisk that kid away from them,
Yep.
and call counsel, right? A
Yep.
counsel. What I can say is that our counsel, shout out to firm. I won't name them, but they're gonna be very busy if ICE decides that they want to come on our campus, because I'm whisking these kids away. We're calling counsel, and we ready for the battle, because you're not going to come and disrupt these kids' lives and think that that's okay because of somebody's fascination with trying to disrupt people's lives. Like, I'm not having that.
I just wonder what kind of person thinks that a school location and a student is the best venue to sort of, even if you were someone who believed, right, in a more draconian approach to immigration policy, right? I get it. There are people that's their philosophy, and we may disagree, but I respect that opinion. I don't think a child in a school is the place to implement that, like that policy. That just feels like the lowest of the low to do that to a student, regardless of their age, in the place that is supposed to be loving, caring, nurturing, and enriching to that student. That just feels like a betrayal on a misalignment of like just common decency.
Yeah, I think that's the part for me. Just the
Yeah.
the whole betrayal, the whole betrayal of decency. So
Yeah.
final thought.
Final thoughts. Look, shout out to I have my problems with the governor, but shout out to the governor and shout out to the attorney general for collaborating on this, as well as the commissioner of education. I think it's important work to be able to give cover to schools in this time, particularly in this time of uncertainty. So I appreciate them providing clarity in times of uncertainty.
Yeah, appreciate that. So I'm doing this for G, and so I'm gonna give you three things to watch besides watching the inauguration that's about to occur on Monday. So the first thing is you can catch up on Abbott Elementary. This season is
Yep.
hella funny
Yep.
and exciting. So shout out to the writers and creators with regards to that. You can also watch Chicago PD. Chicago PD is fire. Shout out to Sergeant Atwater, the person that plays that role happens to be one of my fraternity brothers. Shout out to the brothers of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. All right, and then Monday night there's a Knicks game. I mean the Knicks game. The Knicks are playing the Atlanta Hawks on Monday,
Yeah. Yep.
and you can extend that out, possibly watch that on rerun, and do all the things besides watching this commentary, bro. What I wanted to talk about, and I know we don't
Somebody,
have time.
hold on. Somebody said to me, "I have no desire to watch a man swear an oath that he has no intent to keep." Right? There's no way he's keeping an oath. So why would I
That
watch him
part,
swear?
bro. That part, bro. Hey, and his hands are gonna be on the Bible. He about to put his hands on the Bible and lie
lie.
to God. He about to put his hands on the Bible and lie to God. I can't, bro. I can't. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Yeah. Peace.